Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Today was surprisingly eventful, with this happening near an outdoor dining restaurant I was eating at. So the story was, I was sitting down just waiting for my order until I heard a commotion around the corner. A woman, I wanna name the Toast Karen because this was in front of the restaurant I was eating at, which was called Toast Eatery. She shoved two elderly, both a married couple, around with plenty of people watching, and not stopping whatsoever, explaining she's doing it cause she was being followed by the two. As soon as she stopped, the old man started to try swinging at her in self-defense to protect himself and his wife, missing, but during that, Toast Karen kept yelling at him to stay away from her, even though she provoked him in the first place. There were plenty of witnesses, one who tried to keep the peace, another was recording the whole thing, and while Karen, unaware no one will believe her, yelled out to call the police. People had already called the police and said that she needs to stay in order for her to face her actions. But she kept yelling, "I don't want your illuminate police. I want the real police. Call the real police." It was 3 minutes of her yelling that and trying to claim that she wasn't high whatsoever. One witness assumed because of her frizzy hair action and red nose like Rudolph. She also tried to leave the crime scene by herself until the man who was trying to keep the peace stopped her and assumed she could get her side of the story to the police once they arrived, and chose to stay close to her till the cops arrived. Later, 3 patrol officers arrived at the scene and started getting statements from any witnesses present. While I was texting my friends what was happening, the Toast Karen sat down with a peacemaker next to a cafe while the elderly couple was getting their statement translated by a Mandarin officer. They did not speak English but understood a few. The peacemaker tried to tell the Toast Karen to cooperate with the police to get it nice and smooth so she doesn't go through complications, but she refuses, stating that if she gave away her info, they will make her disappear no matter what. After many attempts, the peacemaker gave up and told her that she's on her own then, which led to her activating her victim card and saying she's a real victim here without informing on why. The officer tried to be calm and neutral for Toast Karen to give her name, ID, and story from her, but old Toast Karen wanted this to make sure that the police wasn't a fake, by asking them to get her to the chief of police. The officer refused since it's not in his power to, and he's just doing procedure. But she kept insisting that she needed to confirm one way or another, get the chief at any way possible. After 5 minutes of back and forth, she tried standing up and leaving, trying to excuse it for using the bathroom. Although allow outdoor dining, no restaurant allow anyone to use a bathroom due to safety and COVID rules, and the officer had to stop her. But she refused to sit down and tried to walk away. So the officer grabs her and cuffs her and places her down back on the seat. She later goes into full denial and says that she did nothing wrong. This was cruel, the police is as awful as televised, and I will sue and so forth. Spouting off nonsense while inversely pissing the officer who was trying to be civil about it. She later, as her last resort, starts constantly kicking the officer's leg, thinking she has enough leg muscle like Shinsuke Nakamura. The officer, having had enough, threw her on the ground and with help from one of his partners, kept her on the ground, with one holding down her arm and the other placing his legs on top of hers. She started yelling, "Police brutality, you're hurting me, I'm the victim, call the real police, video her sacrifice," and so on. The officer asks for her to stop resisting and they will let go, but she still struggles and tries to play the victim. Having had enough, the officers soon bring her back up standing as they escort her to the police car. And that was the end of the incident. With a whooping 45 minutes of our time, people witness an event like this. This happened maybe 5 years back. I'm a mailman, and my route consists of a single stop with 65 community boxes for a large gated community of 800 houses. Each community box has 8 to 60 mailboxes in it, 1 to 2 lockers for parcels, and an outgoing mail slot. Each box has a master lock that opens the entire front of the box, so that I can access all of the mailboxes inside of it without having to open all of them individually. The boxes are set up in 4 rows, and it takes me about an hour to deliver to each row. I am paid by salary, not hourly, so the faster I get done, the more per hour I get paid, which is a great incentive to find ways to cut time out of my day. One way I do this is that I will split the mail into 4 sections, 1 for each row of boxes, instead of bundling mail for each box individually. I then open all the boxes on that row, go through the flats, magazines and legal envelopes and such, and then through with the letters, and then through with the packages. Then lock everything up and move on to the next row. I've been doing this route for 20 years now, and most of the people there know me by sight. I'm friendly with a few, and whenever someone I don't know approaches while working, I let them know my rules. You do not reach into any mailbox that I currently have open. If you need your mail now and are unable to come back later, tell me which of the boxes your mailbox is in, and I will close it for you so that you can unlock your individual mailbox and get your mail from it. I will not deliver out of order, no matter how big a hurry you happen to be in, because the mail all comes in a specific order, and it's a pretty large waste of my time to have to dig through and find yours. And I do not permit children to be near any box that is open, because you never know what a kid is going to grab. And grab they do. I know from experience. I feel like these are reasonable rules to ask people to follow. And so, along comes Karen. This being a rather wealthy gated community, you would think I would run into more of them, but the people there are usually really polite and respectful of my rules. So you know the type. Slightly overweight, bleach blonde pop cut, pantsuit, shoes that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, and she walks up to me as I'm just starting to unload everything from my mail truck and demands to know which mailbox is hers. She didn't tell me her name nor her address, she just walks up and demands to know which mailbox is hers. You might be wondering how she could possibly not know. When there is 800 mailboxes and 65 community boxes, it can be a little daunting to figure out which box is yours, especially when you first move in. So, in this situation, there is a few questions I need to ask to figure out the best way to help someone. So I start with, have you received a set of mail keys yet? To which she replied, I don't see how that is any of your business. I explained to her that I needed to know if she had her keys yet, so I knew if I needed to grab my lock change kit and swap out the lock so I could hand her a new set of keys. So she says that yes, she has her keys. Meanwhile, her son, probably 8 to 10 years old, is starting to pick through the mail I have already unloaded. I have kids, I know how to talk to kids. I told him that he needed to stop playing with the mail. Not loud, not mean, but firm. Karen absolutely exploded over this. She started screaming about how I had no right to order her son around like that. When she finally yelled herself out, I told her that what the boy was doing was called tampering with the mail. That is a felony. And as his legal guardian, she will be held responsible if he didn't stop. So she made a token getaway from their comment to her kid, and he moved off to play on the grass nearby. So I got all of her information and showed her which box was hers. It was in the last row, so I wouldn't be getting to it for a few hours. She opened it and found all of the mail that had come for her before she got her key. She flipped through it to make sure it was all hers. I keep meticulous track of who lives where and who has moved out. So I've been pulling and forwarding all of the mail from the previous owner and delivering anything with a name I didn't recognize for a couple of weeks. I typically do not start delivering the weekly ads to boxes until someone has picked up their mail for the first time, because they can really pile up. She saw that there were no ads and flipped out, accusing me of stealing her mail and telling me that she was going to drag my postmaster down there and get me fired. It was in fact our postmaster who had trained me when I first started. He was a carrier then. He was the one that told me to do that, and he tells all the new carriers to do so to this day. I asked if she would like his phone number and she started yelling at me for being witty. As she was doing that, her son started poking around in the mail again. Since this was his second warning, I was a lot sharper when I told him to get away from it this time, and he started crying. Like this 10-year-old kid crying like a 4-year-old. Talk about spoiled. Yeah, 10-year-olds cry, but not like that, and not from a little "hey, I told you to get away from that." I expect this kid has never been told no in his entire life.
How dare you yell at my baby? Don't you know who I am?
Karen screamed at me, and then slapped me full across the face. I've been hit before, but that one caught me so by surprise that I actually saw stars. I didn't think that was actually a thing until then. I was taught to never hit a woman, so I restrained myself, but told her that if she did that again, I was going to have to call the police, and I would be pressing assault charges, and that her boy needed to get away from the mail. She then told me that if I called the police, she would tell them that I tried to assault her. I was like, whatever. Have a nice day, lady, as sarcastically as humanly possible. She then stood there, and I was like, what? And she says, "What about today's mail?" And I told her my rules, and that I wouldn't be getting to her box for a few hours. She looked like she was going to lose it again, but just walked off in a frustrated huff. She didn't go far though. She walked over a ways away from the mailboxes, and stood there like she was going to wait 3 hours for me to get to her mailbox, just out of sheer spite or something. I was like, whatever, and went back to unloading. I opened up all the boxes on the first row and started delivering. Her kid came over for a closer look, and that's fine, as long as he stays back and keeps his hand to himself. Kids are curious and often surprised by how the community boxes open up, and want a closer look. I get that. I told him that he could watch, but he needed to stay back. Thankfully, Karen did not hear this, or I imagine she'd be screaming at me again. I finished up the first row and I looked over. Karen was still there waiting and glaring at me like I'd murdered her family. Her son looked like he was about to drop dead of sheer boredom, and I don't blame him. Watching me deliver mail is not exactly the most entertaining thing in the world. I don't get why she wouldn't just go home and come back in a few hours. Like, what did she think she was going to prove by standing there and glaring at me the whole time I was working? So, before I got started on the second row, I made a quick call to my supervisor at the post office and let her know everything that had happened. She told me that if Karen should approach me again, I was to start filming her with my phone so that there would be video evidence if things escalated. Was what sealed Karen's fate in the end and saved me from wrongful assault accusations. So I'm glad she told me to do it. So I get back to work, open all the boxes on the second row and start delivering. The kid was back watching me, but this time, he moved right up to me and reached into one of the mailboxes as I put a magazine into it like he was going to grab the magazine. I grabbed him by the wrist, pulled his hand out, and pinned it to his chest with a finger. Then told him in a very low, serious voice that if he did that again, things were going to get nasty. So what does the kid do? He reaches into the box, pulls out the magazine, and tears it in half. So at this time, I'm at the absolute end of my patience with these people. I lost it. I started yelling at the kid and at Karen. The Karen started yelling at me back. I pulled out my phone and started filming her. She went on a rampage. She started flipping all of my trays of mail over, throwing it all over the place, throwing packages around, reaching into open mailboxes, and throwing mail from them onto the ground. I got it all on film while I was trying to stop her. She kept saying, "Don't you put your hands on me or I scream assault." Then she pulls out her phone and calls the police. She tells them that the mailman has tried to force himself on her and that she needs officers there immediately. As I'm filming everything, it's like she doesn't even live in reality. Then she just stands there amid the mess with this triumphant, evil little smile on her face. Like, "I got you and I know it. Now I'm gonna watch you burn." I stopped filming and called my supervisor, My supervisor called the police and the postal inspectors, who have the same authority as US Marshals and handle all mail-related crimes. My supervisor shows up first. I explain everything that happens again, and I show her the video. She starts ripping into the Karen while the Karen keeps trying to say that I tried to assault her. My supervisor grabbed the phone and shoved it right up in front of her face and screamed, "Yeah, witch." I can see that actually happened from the video evidence that shows nothing of the sort. The police showed up next and looked kind of at last for what they were supposed to do. The mail looked like a bomb went off. There is my supervisor screaming at Karen and not even letting her get a word in. There is her kid happily opening up as many packages as he can get his hands on, which I didn't even notice until then. They finally decided but they had gotten an attempted assault call, so they were going to cuff me and read me my rights. But my supervisor intervened, showed them the video and told them what really happened. Then the postal inspectors showed up. Postal inspectors have no sense of humor. I think it's surgically removed when they take the job. They also do not take nonsense from anyone. They looked at the mess, then looked at the video. They took my statement, and they arrested Karen for tampering with the mail, and for allowing a minor in her care to open mail not addressed to her. My supervisor had to send 4 other carriers over to help clean up the mess, and we were there well after dark getting it all sorted out and put into the boxes. Quite a few of the other residents had gathered to watch, and some stuck around to chat a bit while we were cleaning up. I explained what all had happened, and some of them were well aware of Karen and what a complete Karen she could be. So Karen went to trial. I was brought in to give my version of events. In the end, Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison and had to pay a $250,000 fine. And I got a week off work to deal with my own anxiety over the whole thing. People, I don't care how angry you are or what you think you're doing. You do not screw with the mail. You will go to prison for it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.